Hello and welcome, welcome. My name is Roger Philipp of Roger CPA Review. A little background on myself. Went to school in Los Angeles. I then worked at Deloitte and Touche in downtown LA where I got my CPA certificate. Left there about 20 plus years ago when I was 7. Started teaching CPA Review. That's all I do full time. My job is to take accounting and give it life, energy, passion, focus you into the key information, help you accomplish your goal, which one day is to sit for and successfully complete the CPA exam. I'm here today to talk a little bit about how it is to get a summer internship, also the interviewing process. So interviewing techniques, what's going to best set you up for an internship, which eventually may lead to a full-time job as well. A little bit of background on Roger CPA Review. As I said, I've been teaching for over 20 years, but Roger CPA Review's been around for about 10 years. We're the fastest growing review course in the country. We have locations, 20 plus locations all over the country, in Japan. As the CPA exam goes global, so does Roger CPA Review. We also have firms with 100 plus big accounting firms like Deloitte and Ernst & Young and BDO, the IRS, and so forth. Also, best in the business. What does that mean? I walk you through the material in a way that it makes sense. I try to keep you motivated, energetic, and focused into what it is you need to know. We have the highest pass rates of any review course in the industry, about 86+%. And the course includes everything you need to get you through the exam. So let's start out and look at what are we going to hit today. First of all, talking about increased career opportunities, because in this busy environment, it's difficult sometimes to get a job. What does that mean? It means you need to get out there, put yourself in the right environment, and meet the right people. You also have to kind of do a self-assessment. Look at yourself and evaluate your goals and say, where is it I see myself down the road? Look at the different career opportunities or avenues in accounting. Also talking about how to get that job, which means interviewing techniques, being prepared, thinking about the questions that you may be asked of yourself, but also the questions that you want to ask. And then at the very end, I'll talk a little bit about the new exam, which started in 2011, and some of the changes that have occurred between 2010 and 2011 as it relates to the exam. As far as increased career opportunity, how is it that I can, A, gain exposure to the profession, but also have the profession be exposed to me? In other words, I need to make sure the profession knows that I exist in order for them to offer me an internship, which eventually leads to a job. First way is active involvement in campus organizations. Get actively involved in your accounting club, whether it's an accounting association or Beta Alpha Psi. I always tell people, don't just be a passive member, but be an active member. That means become an officer. I mean, think about it. Why do people become officers of the club? Is it to help the world become a better place? We are the world, maybe. But it also gives them exposure to the firms. The firm sees that you're the person that contacted them about a presentation. They go, wow, this person has good communication skills. They're intelligent. They're well organized. Let's give them a job offer. Another way, cultivate an instructor network. What does that mean? I remember back when I was in school, I would go to my instructor's office hours, and I would go in there. They go, hey, Raj, because I wanted to work on a personal relationship with them. Because believe it or not, a lot of the recruiters, they turn to the professors, and they say, hey, is there anyone in your classes you could recommend? Because you've got to realize the recruiter's job is difficult. Their goal is to go out and hire 5, 10, 20 people that they think are going to last for a while. So what are they going to do? They're going to use every resource available, including the instructors. So I would go to my instructor, hey, how you doing? Become friends with them. After a while, it's like, hey, there's Raj, brown nose, brown nose. But guess what? It works. I got plenty of job offers. Also, developing a network with members in the profession. What does that mean? As I said about becoming involved in the organization, go to all the different events that your campus may have. Every school is different, but some have meet the firms, some have banquets, some have firm tours, for example. They might have a picnic. They might have things that help society, like going out and picking up garbage. And a lot of times, firm members are at these events. What is just as important as going to the event is meeting the people at the event. That means getting there early, looking smart, looking professional, looking like someone that firm would be better off having. So it's always important to kind of think about this. A lot of us think, well, the only way to get a job is to have an impressive resume. Just as important as a 4.25 GPA, and we all know these people, we hate these people, they ruin the curve for the class, is just as important as a good resume and GPA is meeting the people that do the hiring. So again, think about that as far as the organizations, the professors, and getting involved in different activities as well. Now, starting out, how do I become effective at networking? In other words, how do I work a room? The first thing is you have to make a good first impression. As they always say, you never get a second chance to make a good first impression. So that means you have to dress professionally, such as a nice dark suit, a nice, I like to get a wild tie so I can kind of be remembered by my wild tie. And these days, if you're like me and you're kind of colorblind, you can buy a shirt that matches the tie. So every time I get them back from the dry cleaner, I look at the name of the shirt, name of the tie. Hey, they match up. When you meet these people, a good firm handshake, what does it say? It says you calm, confident, professional message. You don't want that limpy, hi, I'm Roger, right? Because it doesn't give that sense of professionalism. So a nice firm handshake, give them good eye contact. Hi, I'm Roger Philipp. Looking them in the eye. It's not a staring contest. You blink, you lose. But you want to have a good professional handshake, eye contact. Have you ever met someone that's like, hi, they don't give you that sense of confidence. So you really want to make sure you do that. Before you go to these events, think about what your goals are, because you're, again, want to accomplish those goals, whether it's meeting 2 people, 5 people, 20 people. Maybe there's someone at a specific firm you want to meet. Then go up and establish that rapport. Go up to them, introduce yourself, start to talk about. And I always let people know what you talk about is not as important as the rapport you have. A lot of people think, I'm going to a banquet, I'm going to an event, I'm going maybe for an in-house interview. What is it I should, again, the rapport. What you talk about is not as important as after you talk to that person for 2, 5, 7 minutes, they go, wow, this person's exciting, I like their energy, this is someone I could work with 40, 50, 60 hours a week. And then at the end, you want to leave a positive feeling with all the people that you meet. So at the end, they go, wow, I really enjoyed spending time with that person. Before you walk in, think about setting goals. With setting goals, we have what we call short-term goals. Those are little stepping stones to accomplishing your long-term goals. So your short-term goal may be for the next couple of days, couple of weeks, maybe even couple of months. It's what you want to accomplish now. For example, I'm going to go to a Meet the Firms coming up. I want to meet someone from this, and this firm. So that's my short-term goal. The long-term goal, that again is a sense to look at where do you see yourself 1, 2, 5, 7 years down the road. For example, I see myself as a partner at a big firm. Well, my short-term goal is what? Getting good grades, getting exposure, getting to meet the people that are going to do the hiring. So putting yourself out there so you too become a viable candidate for that position, whether it's an internship, whether it's a full-time position. So again, think of yourself as a product. You want to make sure that people have exposure to the product so they know the product exists. That's very important. That's why getting involved and thinking about your goals as well. I also have a presentation on setting goals and achieving success. We set goals in a variety of areas. For example, career, which is what we're talking about here, career in accounting, financial, physical, mental, family, spiritual. These are all areas where in life, to have a well-balanced life, the goal is to kind of satisfy as most of those areas as possible, although unfortunately, you can't necessarily have all your goals met simultaneously. Life is not a commercial on TV where everybody has they're healthy, they're beautiful, they have a great family, they have a great career, they're making lots of money, and everything else. Unfortunately, life is kind of like a trip to the salad bar. Remember this place, Sizzler, where you go to a salad bar, you get an itty-bitty little plate, and you go, I think I'm going to pursue some goals, which would be career, maybe some financial. Whoop, my plate is full. So you can't necessarily have everything, which is career and financial and physical and mental and spiritual and family. You can't necessarily have it all simultaneously, but that's why life's exciting. It's a balancing act. You kind of work it out and say, okay, what's important to me today? Because what's important today may be different than what's important 5, 10, 20 years from now if at that point you have a family, for example. Now, as far as heading into the career of accounting, there's a myriad of choices. In other words, we all say, well, public. Like, how many want to go to a Big Four? I want to go, what do you know about a Big Four? They're big, there's 4 of them, right? So a lot of us haven't necessarily done our homework to say, well, what are the opportunities? And one of the things I like to impress upon people, especially while you're still in school, is you're sitting here in this room and you're listening to the presentation and you say, well, what are my goals? Do I want to go public? Do I want to go private? Do I want to go governmental? And I know when I sat in your same situation, I didn't know much about accounting. All I knew was, I got to get me a job. But I didn't realize all the career opportunities that existed. So that's one of the purposes of getting actively involved, for example, in the club. The first area would be public accounting. Now, what is public accounting? That's where, for example, when I worked at Deloitte, I was an external independent auditor. My job was to go out to a company and pick up their financial statements. My job, for example, was to go out and do an audit. So, for example, let's say I look at their balance sheet. And when you look at the balance sheet, what is the most liquid asset on the balance sheet? How about cash and cash equivalents, right? The first balance. What is cash? That's that green stuff you carry around, right? Makes you popular. Get your friends, get you dates, right? That's cash. What's a cash equivalent? Oh, I knew that in my intermediate accounting class. Let me say, highly liquid, original maturity of 3 months or less. Oh, okay. So as an auditor, as an independent auditor, my job is to go out there, obtain their financial statements, and give an objective, unbiased, neutral opinion on their financial statements. So, what are some of the characteristics, whether you're working at Big Four, national, local? Well, you could be working in the audit department, you could be working in the tax department, you could be in consulting, you could be in management services, you could be in IT. But the key is that you're out there as an independent, objective person coming out, obtaining their information, and for example, in the audit department, giving an opinion on their financial statements, balance sheet, income statement, cash flows, retained earnings, and so on. So what are some of the characteristics? Well, basically, you need to be a little bit outgoing. You have to have good communication skills, especially in the audit department. Because I remember when I was at Deloitte, I might be on an audit job for maybe 2 months, and you finally get familiar, comfortable with the client. Just as you get comfortable, boom, you roll off that job, go to another job. So for example, when I worked at Deloitte, I might go out to a client, and it's a relationship where it's not like the client's excited to see you. It's like, the auditor's here, Roger's here. It's kind of like, the auditor's here, hide, because they have all their work to do, plus all this extra stuff you put on their shoulders. I need this, I need this, I need this. I need sufficient, appropriate audit evidence. And the client's like, ugh, I hate auditors, right? And basically, our job is to obtain that information because we are acting with what we call professional skepticism. That's where you question and doubt everything. Because at the end of the audit, what do? You draft the audit report. And one of the things on the CPA exam is the audit report. What does it say? In our opinion, the statements referred to above presents fairly in all material aspects, financial position of XO 1231, the result of its operations in conformity with U.S. GAAP. All right, what is GAAP? Generally accepted accounting principles, FIFO, LIFO, weighted average, and so on. So you're giving an opinion, saying, in my opinion, these statements are in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles. So basically, you're out there obtaining that information. What are you acting with? Professional skepticism, questioning and doubting. So when you head out to an event, before you go in, when you talk to someone and they're in public accounting, you already realize that's audit, that's tax, that's consulting. That could be Big Four, national, local. And each of those firms will give you different types of opportunities as far as your career development. At a small firm, for example, you become more of a generalist because you might be doing audit and tax. At a large firm, they may have separate departments where you're only doing audit. Maybe you're doing audits of small business versus huge corporations. So there's, again, a lot of choices, different choices between the size of the firms that you choose. So realize that going in to any event. Another choice would be private accounting. Now, what is private? Private means you work internally within the firm. So, for example, I brought some financial statements with me. Let's say, for example, I work here at UPS or I work here at Boeing. Let's say I work internally within the firm. So what does that mean? I could be, CEO, CFO, COO, controller, bookkeeper, financial analyst. Now, when I work for the firm, what does that mean? That means, can I own stock in the firm? Yeah, I can. So one of the nice things in private, you work within the firm, you might have stock options. One of my friends works at Fox Studios. What is his job? His job is what we call participation accounting. What does that mean? It means that on the back end of the movie, they have to figure out how much the actor, writer, director, producers get. So that way he has to figure out their participation. So you've got a movie like Avatar that made billions of dollars. His job is to figure it out. Then they prepare the check. The president signs the check, meets the actor. How you going? Here you go, blah, blah, blah. So again, it's all part of accounting, but it's private. So what are some of the characteristics? Quite often you go to the same location. What are some of the cool things? He gets to go to movie openings. He gets to eat at the commissary. He gets a parking lot. Most importantly, bonus, and he gets stock options. Because he doesn't have to be independent because he works inside the firm. So that's called private. Another friend of mine worked at Arco, right, in the oil industry. His job was going out in internal audit. So he was internal versus when you're in public, you're external. So internal audit, he would go to different locations and he was doing what we call an operational audit. Were they doing the effectiveness, efficiency, economy, the right thing correctly within the proper budget? So that is, again, still part of accounting. In other words, we all started in the same room, starting in an accounting club meeting. But guess what? We all went in a little bit different direction. Another option is what we call governmental accounting. Now, what is government? That could be things like the IRS, right? What does the IRS do besides scare you, right? They audit your 1040. your Schedule A, B, C, D, and so forth. So that's your IRS federal. You have state, right? Maybe a franchise tax board. State board of what? Equalization. What do? They equalize. No. What do? They do sales tax. Sales tax audit. So I didn't realize that till I wrote my own books, started selling my own material. All of a sudden, I have to charge sales tax. What does that then mean? Someone comes out and does an audit of you to make sure you're paying enough in sales tax. DCAA, Defense Contract Audit Agency. So all of these are governmental choices. What's nice about it is you get great training. What's nice about it is you generally have like 40 hours a week, right? Whereas in public, I'm sure a lot of your friends are working a little more than 40, maybe 50, 60, 70 hours a week. But in government, generally you get great benefits, great training, set schedule. Sometimes, like one of my friends at the IRS gets a caseload, and that caseload is basically what he needs to look over, the people, not clients, but the people that he has to go out after and so forth. So it's kind of interesting. Another cool thing, one of my friends who works at the IRS, guess what? He gets to carry a gun on his ankle. Wow, that's kind of cool, right? When I worked at Deloitte, they never gave me a gun, right? It's not like, freeze, I need your general ledger now, right? It wasn't like that. Instead, it's like, let me have your general. But in government, that's one of the cool things. Another friend of mine worked at the FBI, and within a couple of weeks of training, he was on like a high-speed undercover bank fraud audit case. So racing through the streets of LA, and I'm kicking and tying and footing and cross-footing. But what I want you to realize is don't just think Big Four, but I love Big Four, I went there as well. But what I want you to think about is public, private, governmental. Because you may not get your first choice. You may say, I only want to work at this firm. Guess what? Keep your options open, especially in a slow economy. There aren't quite as many jobs as there had been in the past. So you need to make yourself as marketable as possible and also as informed as possible, so that way you can get any and every job that you're interested in. Now, how do I get that job? First of all, you need an effective resume. What does that mean? It means a resume is a picture of your past and present accomplishments. It's basically, who are you today? So this is what I've done. This is who I am. You also want to kind of concentrate your resume in what? Into whatever profession you're heading into, whether it's public, private, governmental. Obviously, it's accounting. You also want to have a good objective, and not just a generic, obtain an entry-level position in accounting. But use action verbs. Action verbs. They describe created, implemented, designed, managed, supervised, developed. So, for example, looking for a career to use my high energy and my communication skills. What is the benefit of that? You're basically telling someone that you think, A, you have high energy, and B, you're a good communicator. So I'm using that first little sentence, my objective, in a way to really mention what it is I'm looking for. Another thing with your resume. Realize that a lot of us have the same background. We've taken the same accounting classes, same profession. You want to show your uniqueness. How is it that I stand out? How is it that I can be an asset to your firm? That's what this resume is. It's a picture of who you are, past and present, up to that date. Now, when you look at it, it should never be more than one page. Why not? Unless you're going for an upper-level position, CEO, CFO, president, or something, then it could be 2 pages. But generally, I hate to say it, but at this point in our career, we haven't all done that much yet, all right, to make us that exciting. So you want to make sure that you keep it to 1 page. The main sections would be a header, your objective, talk about some of your education, especially if it's a recruiter that you know that went to that school. There might be a professor that's popular. That brings up, again, I'm trying to get something on this piece of paper that during that interview, if they have a question, they go, oh, I took that professor, boom. Then you spend 15 minutes talking to about that professor, and they walk out going, this was a good interview. Guess what? They just focused on one area on your resume, but that's what you want. A little bit about your experience, what it is you've done, but again, using action verbs. Like, for example, maybe the only job I've had was working at Starbucks as a barista, right? But what did I do? I'd make the soda, or make the coffee, I'd give it to them. They go, oh, this coffee's not good. I go, I'm sorry, let me give this, let me give you change. So what did I do at Starbucks? Conflict resolution, right? Oh, it's not low fat. Financial transactions, right? Giving them change. But the point is, you want to show how, using those verbs, how you can help that firm you're looking at. Another area, too, would be activities. I put on my resume things like travel through Europe, speak another language, snowboarding, whatever it is, because you're going to have some interviewers who are awesome. They sit there, they ask you questions, boom, boom, boom. They have some where they just said, hey, especially when you do an in-house, they'll have someone, they say, hey, who's available to interview? Oh, Bob is. Here, interview him. And they're looking at your resume for something to talk about. guess what? They get to snowboard and they go, oh, you snowboard, where do you go? Oh, I like to go to Tahoe, Mammoth, I like to go back. All of a sudden, you have something in common. As I mentioned earlier, whether it's a banquet, meet the firms, or an interview, what you talk about is not as important as the rapport. The rapport meaning that they go, wow, this was great. This was a great interview. I like this person. I'm interested in this person. He's someone that I wouldn't mind working for 40, 50 hours with. Because when I worked in public, there were times when we were working in the conference room with a view of downtown LA. And I'm sitting there at the client's office, ticking and tying, go, wow, I'm a somebody. I made it. There's other times where they put the manager, the senior, the new hire, all at a little coffee table in the corner. And for 50 hours a week, you're sitting this close to each other. Well, the recruiter's looking for someone who will blend well with their other staff. That's your chance, whether it's an event on campus, whether it's your resume, whether it's an interview. That is your chance to show them your uniqueness, how you stand out. Some other optional areas would be your skills, also any kind of awards or honors that you've won. But again, think of it this way. They've got hundreds of resumes. You want to somehow show your uniqueness, the way that you stand out, and why you're going to be better than anyone else that they decide to bring in. Now, what are the different types of interviews rather? Different types of interviews. We have an on-campus interview. You might have a phone interview. Eventually, hopefully, an office visit. Now, the on-campus interview, what is that? And this is, I remember what I did is back in my day, before we had these things called computers, I remember that we took our resume and we put them in different boxes. And the firms would then look and then take your resume. If they liked it, they would bring you in for an on-campus meeting. Same thing still happens, except now you have to usually apply online or go to the Career Center, but somehow you want to get your resume in front of them. One of the things also, when you're preparing your resume, do an online search because you want to make sure that your resume is set up correctly. If it's an accounting job you're looking for, which I assume you are, then you want to make sure that it has more of an accounting focus. So same kind of thing. So before you submit that resume through the Career Center, make sure it looks correct. Now, your on-campus interview generally could be, 15, 20, 30 minutes. You go into a room, you sit with a person from the firm, they look at your resume, you want to dress professionally. Remember, you never get a second chance to make a good first impression. You walk in, you sit down, and they start asking you questions. So I always like to think ahead of time of the questions I want to ask of them, also the things that I want to make sure they walk away with knowing about me. So that's something we'll talk about in a few minutes with questions, but that's an on-campus. They could have a phone interview. They'll ask you, hey, when are you available for a few minutes by phone? Make sure it's a time where there's no screaming baby in the background. Make sure it's not, you're at work and you're in the back room next to the coffee grinder. So think ahead, plan a time that's going to work for you. Make sure you're in a nice, quiet environment so you can think. Make sure you have good cell service if you give them your cell phone. But that also brings up a good point. Make sure your message on your cell phone is professional. It's not like, hey, Raj isn't around. Hey, so you want to make sure it's professional. Same thing. Check your Facebook. Check all of those things now because you don't want to be, hey, upside down margarita party, and they're doing research on you because believe you me, they will do that research, especially in this day and age. There's so much information available about you out there that they're going to do research before they even meet you in a lot of cases. Office visits. This is the best one because now they're coming in. It could be either like an office tour or they may have invited you individually because maybe I met someone at a banquet or an event and they were impressed with me and they said, here's my card, send me a resume. And then they invite me in. So what happens? You walk in, you meet the receptionist, you're very polite, you're very professional. Why? Because they ask everybody what they thought of you. Right? I've heard of stories they went in and they were rude to the receptionist. They didn't get a job offer. They didn't get an internship. Why not? Because they said, what did you think of this person? Oh, he was very nice. Oh, he was rude to me. Really? Yeah, he talked to me in a degrading way. Awful, right? You get in that, well, first of all, you should be nice all the time. But you walk in that door, you're nice to the elevator person, you're nice to every single person. Hi, how are you? Lovely day, isn't it? Mm-hmm, good. And then you walk up, because you don't know who's standing behind you listening to what you're saying. You get in there, you walk up, hi, I'm Roger Philipp, I'm here for an interview with so-and-so. Oh, great, please have a seat. I sit there, I look professional, I look around, I like to look at the paperwork that's out. Before you go in, you want to do a little research on the firm. You can do that all online these days. Do a little bit of research so you know how many offices they have, what kind of industry they specialize in. Anything, again, that shows you're interested. When I have a job opening and I'm looking to hire someone, first question I ask is, hey, have you looked at my website? If they say no, guess what? They're not interested in me. Why should I be interested in you? So make sure you look at their website. Make sure you look at a few, just, you don't have to memorize it, but have a few basics. Oh, I understand that 72% of your business is in entertainment. Oh, that's interesting. What kind of clients do you personally work on? Blah, blah. So think about that. So the office visit, it depends. If it's like an office interview, you go in, first you meet with the recruiter. Then they're going to walk you over and you're going to meet with a person and you're going to have maybe 4 interviews for about 15 to 30 minutes each. And I remember, because when I was at Deloitte, when I was unassigned, I did a lot of these. And the best part was I got to go to lunch. So you go in, you meet the recruiter, then you go and you meet someone. Each person you meet, they will walk you back to the recruiter's office and then you'll go for another interview. The first thing they do is they pick up a piece of paper with your name on it and they evaluate you. And then at the bottom, what does it say? Offer or reject. Really? Yes. So every single person you meet will evaluate you. If they get 1 reject, then depending on what the environment looks like, chances are you ain't going to get in. So what does that mean? You want to make sure you impress every single person. I don't care how tired you are. It's the end of the day. You're cranky. You know what? This is the most important day of your life. So you need to do a really good job. You need to be prepared. So then at the very end, you'll meet a partner. And you go in there and you meet the partner. Hi, I'm Roger Philipp. How are you? And then I look around and I see pictures on his desk of some kids. I go, oh, are those your kids? Yes, they are. Really? Where was that picture taken? Hawaii. Really? What island? Oh, Maui. I was in Maui. All of a sudden, you're spending 15 minutes talking about Maui. For a minute, the partner's on vacation again. Do. Guess what? You get a job offer. So remember, what you talk about is not as important as the rapport. Make sure that you think ahead as far as what you're looking for in accomplishing during that interview. Now, what is the main purpose of an interview? First of all, it is a way to look at how you're going to learn about the company, also the behaviors that you carry. The other thing, too, is it's an accurate predictor of your job success in the employer-related situations. Because what they're looking at is how do you blend in? Do you look professional? Again, realize that when I worked at Deloitte, they would send me out to a client, and I'm being billed at maybe $150 an hour. Wow, so I'm out. But they want to make sure I'm not looking kind of schlocky and unprofessional, and I don't carry myself correctly, or I chew with my mouth open. Because, you know, part of your in-house, you go to lunch. I was always stressed out about that. What did I always do? Order food that's easy to eat. You don't want to order like spaghetti. Hi, right? You want to order something like, I would always get like a chicken breast. Why? No bone. You just cut it up. You eat half of it. Eat a little of this. Oh, no, I'm full. Do you drink? No, never. Even if they order drinks, I order iced tea. Always order iced tea. It's safe. Unless you don't drink caffeine, order something else. But the point is, I want to set a good first impression. That's what they're looking for. That is the purpose of the interview. Because they want to see if you fit in well with the firm. Now, you've got to realize, the economy goes like this. It's called business cycles. It's on the CPA exam in the BSEE section of economics. The life goes in business cycles. What happens here is a couple of years ago, the economy was booming. If you had a degree in accounting and a pulse, you got a job. Now, you really have to shine above the rest. That means you need to do your homework before you even consider interviewing for the internship. That means all the way from looking at yourself, looking in the mirror, how do you look? What kind of impression do you make? Looking at your resume, looking at your communication, looking at your eating habits, business etiquette. You know, are you eating with your mouth full? I'm sorry, hopefully you are. Are you talking with your mouth full? That's not very good. Are you spitting food? That's not professional. These are the little things that, again, you're neck and neck with someone else for that one internship. They may, beat you out because of these kind of things. So they're looking at not just your piece of paper, not just you, but how you carry yourself. Now, the interview structure, as I said, first of all, dress appropriately. Secondly, arrive early. There is never, ever a reason to be late. If you are late, the job's gone. Just consider it gone. Because here it is, the first day where you're trying to make a good impression. You arrive late, there's no excuse. I get to meetings an hour early. And when I'm going somewhere, I drive by, I find the location, there it is. Then I go find parking, then I'll go get, maybe a coffee or something, and then relax, look over my notes, get ready, go up about 10, 15 minutes early. Not too early. You don't want to show up too early because that's also showing that you don't have common sense. So you don't want to show up an hour early. If you're there early, go do something else. So maybe it's a 10 o'clock interview. I'll show up at between 4:45 and 10 till. That way by about 10 till I get up there, see the receptionist, let them know I'm here, and then I've got about 10 minutes to kind of relax. If they're running late, no problem. They're running ahead of schedule, they might bring me in. But I don't want to show up at 9:30 for a 10 o'clock. That's way too early. Then the introduction and the handshake, you go up, again, a firm handshake. Remember, you're not trying to break their fingers, but you want to show calm, confident. I've had people that are really nervous and their hands sweat. You know what I tell them when you go to an event, for example? Hold a soda in that hand. Then when you meet someone, set it down, wipe it so they think it's the soda moisture, and then you shake their hand. Then also, interviewer questions, and then again, the prepared questions. Some of the questions they love, behavioral questions. What is behavioral questions? I'll talk about in just a minute. Now, how do you dress for an interview? Positive first impression. Again, how you look and what you wear. Professional attire. I always suggest a dark suit, something conservative, something very neat and clean. So like I said, I like to wear a dark suit with, maybe a wild colored tie. For women, maybe a pantsuit, maybe a skirt and a blouse. Again, something conservative. The other thing too, I always say, look in the mirror. If you've got 47 earrings in one ear, maybe you want to take a few out. I have friends that have those big holes. You know what? Maybe that's not the best first impression I want to make. I've had students that go, and I'm like, what? They have a tongue bar. I'm like, dude, take that out for the interview, please. Because again, I want to make, and plus all my friends with tongue bars are always playing with it. Right? So you look around the room and go, I know. So again, I'm not saying change who you are, but you want to make a good first impression. Back when I was in school, believe it or not, I looked really young. No way. Yeah. So what I did is I wore my glasses. I took my contacts out and I wore my glasses. Why? Because people with glasses always look more intelligent, right? I mean, look around the room. See the people with glasses? They're no smarter than anyone else, right? But they look smart. So I looked more conservative, I looked more professional, I looked more intelligent. It also helped me look a little older because at the time, that's what I needed. Now, I spray paint the gray in. Yeah, just to look older. But again, that was back then. So again, think about whatever it is you need to do to set yourself aside in a professional manner. What not to bring. Don't bring your iPod. Hey, Mr. Phillip. Oh, yeah, Gum. Don't be chewing gum during your interview. Make sure it's out. Now, I do suggest, having some mints before you meet that person so that your breath smells nice, because I've met people, their breath was atrocious. Guess what? They don't get the interview. They don't get the job offer. Maybe they're competent, but guess what? There's so many people out there that are competent. It's something, so you need to make sure that that's fine. Also, always look in the mirror. When I go on a business lunch, I go to the restroom before we leave, make sure there's not something stuck in my teeth. The other thing, your cell phone, if you're going to bring that with you, turn it on vibrate. Make sure that thing's off. There's nothing worse than during the interview, your phone goes off. It shows a lack of professionalism, a lack of good judgment. So you may need to bring your phone with you, but have it hidden away or have it at least on vibrate. First impression, again, as I said, your appearance, your handshake, a good positive attitude. I meet people that are upbeat and positive. They go, wow, these are fun people to be around. You have other people, they're depressing, they're downers, So make sure you have that positive attitude. Pump it up, especially for the next few minutes. During the interview, take a deep breath. Try to relax your nerves. They're going to ask you questions based on your resume. Also, realize there's no right or wrong answer. You want to be honest. You want to listen carefully. I always say you want to make sure that you're interesting and interested. Interesting as a person. Also interested in what they have to say. I've seen too many people that have prepared questions, and they go in there, and it's kind of like you're a police lineup. So, how long have you been working at the firm? Why'd you choose the firm? What do you like about the firm? Thank you very much. No. You want to ask a question. How long have you been working at the firm? 5 years. Oh, really? Where did you come from? So I want to listen to their. So be interested in what they have to say, but you also need to be interesting in responding to questions. I also always like to kind of ask more questions as well, because people like to talk about themselves, right? Believe me, I've been on a lot of dates back when I was single, and I would get her to start talking about herself, and you're like, oh, okay, and all of a sudden, it was a great date. And I'm like, well, she wouldn't stop talking. But during the interview, if I can get them to start talking, then we just, all of a sudden, we're talking about whatever. Because they may be more nervous during the interview than you, especially if it's just not the recruiter, but one of the other people in the office interviewing you. So really be interested, be interesting, ask questions. Assess if the company and the position are exactly what it is you're looking for. I always tell people before you go, let's say to meet the firms, where there's going to be 20 firms. I say, assume when you walk out, you have to choose one firm to work for. Think about the questions you would want to ask so that at the end of the interview, you could say, yeah, this is the kind of firm I want to work for. Things you don't want to ask about, salary. right? You don't ask about salary. You can figure that out later on. So be careful what you are or aren't talking about. And I have a whole list of things that you do and don't want to talk about. Also, you can do an interview search. You can do a Google search. One of the things I always like people to look for, behavioral questions. Because these are a special type of question where they don't just say, so did you like your accounting classes? Yes, I did. And you also never answer with one word, not a yes or a no. Yes, because blah, blah, blah. No, because blah, blah, blah. Never just one-word answers. But the behavioral questions are things like, tell me a situation where you had a class project due and one of the people wouldn't carry their weight. How did you handle it? Right? So they're trying to get you to think on your feet. That's the purpose of this thing. So again, I want you to keep that in mind as far as what we call behavioral questions. Interview pitfalls. Don't be late, as I mentioned earlier. A lack of preparation, in other words, not knowing anything about the firm, not thinking about what kind of questions you may ask or be asked. Personal matters, sensitive questions. You know, I notice there's only 1% female here. Why is that? You don't want to put them on the defensive. Check your ego at the door. Realize that. Before you walk in, you know what? I'm going to be as humble as I can be. I'm going to be that person that they want. You know, you want to show that you're interested. You know, you don't want to be too aggressive. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? I'm going to have your job. You know, that may be a little bit too much. But you know what? I'd like to have a position similar to yours because I think the kind of job that you're doing sounds really exciting and challenging. And that's exactly what I'm looking for in my career. All right, interviewing the firm. So that means doing your advanced research. That means also asking meaningful questions. I like to know things like, how long have you been at the firm? Why did you choose this firm? What is a typical day for you like? What kind of clients do you work on? So I'm getting information. How much vacation time do you get? Oh, you got 5 weeks. Where did you go on vacation? And then we start talking about vacation. As I said earlier, most of the interviews, and I was on a lot of interviews, most of the interviews, I think actually almost all of them, they never asked me about specific accounting things. They didn't say, so if you're doing pension plans, what is the journal entry? They didn't do that. They just wanted to see who I was. They didn't even care if I had any accounting background. They preferred that I didn't. Why not? Because they can train me and they can mold me. When I started working at Deloitte, for example, I had a week of in-house training, then I had a week of training in Scottsdale, Arizona, then they send you out to work. So they're going to train you anyway. They don't expect you to remember much from school, okay? They're going to train you. They just want to see if you're trainable. So that is, again, your goal during that interview. Sample interview questions about work experience, job awareness, leadership skills, communication skills, how resourceful you are. That's where those behavioral questions come in. How resourceful are you? Can you solve this problem? Because I look for the same thing in my ever-growing company. I want people that can manage themselves, people that can solve their own problems. Definitely come to me with issues, but I want to make sure you can think on your feet. Those are the people that are going to progress and move up the firm. After the interview, what do you need to do? Send them a thank you letter, a follow-up letter. It is a must. And everyone says, should it be an email? Should it be a letter? You know what? How easy is it to delete an email? Boom, delete, gone. A letter, it's a little more difficult. So what I would do, and it depends, you know, how desperate I am. I'm graduating in 3 weeks. I need a job. I have an internship. I really want one. I'm going to be because you know what? 9 out of 10 people might say they loved it. Maybe 9 out of 10 say they didn't like it. You just need one to say this was great. So what I would do is I would write a nice handwritten thank you note. I would then mail it off to all the people that interviewed me that day, thanking them. Because when you get that letter, you open it up, oh, that's nice. You hate to throw it away. So you put it on your desk and then you go, here, recruiter, here's a nice letter I got. And they go, oh, I got one too. What a really nice person. You know, that person, all of a sudden they're talking about you again. You know, I always say in life, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Years ago, there was a concert, Elton John. He was performing at a small place in LA called the Troubadour in Santa Monica Boulevard. And they said, send us a postcard. We're going to pick 10 winners. And you have a winner, then you can buy tickets to go to the show. So we sent in, my brothers and I sent in 3 postcards. Guess what? They weren't this big. They were this big, this big. Guess what? We got picked. Moral of the story, dare to be different. So what do I say? You can send a thank you email. I would probably go one extra step and actually send a thank you handwritten card. View it as kind of like a sales follow-up letter. And then, maybe a couple of days later, I might send an email and say, dear so-and-so, I hope you received my note. I really enjoyed meeting with you. If you have any other questions about my resume, please feel free to contact me. I really look forward to hearing from you soon. You know, so that way they know I'm really interested in the firm. They go, I like this person. You know, so again, you don't want to be too overly aggressive, but you also don't want to sit back waiting, because boom, life's going to pass you on by. Now, at the very end, congratulations, you've done it. What does that mean? Time to relax. You know what? You may have done everything perfectly and you still don't get the job. Shake it off. It's okay. There's many, many firms out there. You need to then polish yourself up. If there's a way to find out, I really enjoyed meeting with you and I'm sorry I didn't get the job, do you mind if I ask? Chances are they're not going to give you too much that's helpful as far as why they didn't choose you. But you need to self-evaluate yourself. But again, don't be too hard on yourself. Realize that, again, there's plenty of jobs out there. You just have to be aggressive. You need to get out there. You need to make sure that the product that you are presenting them is as polished as possible. Let's talk a little bit about the CPA exam. Now, the CPA exam changed in 2011, whereby it's still a 14-hour exam. But what happened is they shuffled some information around. They made auditing a little shorter, BEC a little longer. All of the firms are going to be interested in having you pass the exam. It is part of your career. There have been people that don't get promoted up to senior or manager until they pass the exam. So this is something that you want to get done as soon as completing school as possible. In other words, it's a highly academic exam. In other words, it's all the stuff you've seen in school for the last 4 years, 5 years, 17 years, no matter what program you're on. But it's all that stuff, the culmination of it. And a lot of us say, oh, I'm so busy in school, I'll do it when I'm working. Guess what? Once you start working, you get busier and busier and busier. So it's the kind of thing you want to get through. I know most of the firms will not promote you to manager till you've passed. There are several that won't promote you to senior, which is only 3 years in. And those 3 years go by quickly. So you need to make sure that you're able to pass this exam as early in your career as possible. There's 4 parts to the exam: auditing, fair, reg, and BEC. And you'll see there with the audit portion, that is basically where you go out, you're obtaining management statements, mainly focusing on a financial statement audit. So that's planning the audit, internal control, substantive testing, IT, and then audit reports as well. That's a 4-hour exam. Financial accounting is all of your intermediate 1, intermediate 2, advanced, government, nonprofit. Now, there's stuff on the exam like governmental accounting. Back when I was in school, governmental accounting was an elective, and I elected not to take it. What does that mean? I was never exposed to it except through the review course, which gave me what I needed. So realize, and I realized this, there's a lot of stuff you may have never seen in school that's on the exam. My job is to make sure that I'm teaching it to you in a way that's understandable and a way that you'll remember. For example, I come up with these memory aids and mnemonics. Let's say, for example, on financial, they're asking you about a capital lease versus a operating lease. So an operating lease or capital lease, or under IFRS, operating or a finance lease. So how do you know if it's a capital lease? One of 4 criteria. What are they? TT, BPO, 75 or 90. TT, BPO, 75. And we sing together. What's that? TT, title transfers. You get the pink slip to the Porsche by the end of the lease term. You're going to own it. Debit asset today. Capitalize it. BPO, there's a bargain purchase. Worth 30 grand, buy it for 10 grand. You're going to buy it, you're going to own it, debit asset today. 75, what does that mean? If the lease term is 75% or more of its useful life at inception, you're getting most of the economic benefits, debit asset today. 90, present value of the minimum lease payments greater than or equal to 90% of the value, fair value, debit asset. So TT, BPO, 75 or 90, those are the mnemonics that help you to get through the exam. Regulation is tax and law, 60% tax, about 40% business law and professional responsibilities. And then BEC is a 3-hour exam, economics, financial management, IT. So notice that from 2010 to 2011, the exam length didn't change. It's still 14 hours. But what they did is they moved 30 minutes off of audit over to the BEC exam. Now, the way that it's broken down, fair, audit, and reg are 60% multiple choice, 40% what we call task-based simulations or problems. BEC is 85% multiple choice, and about 15% what we call written communication. So, for example, with fair, audit, and reg, you're going to have 6 or 7 task-based simulations worth 40% of your score. On BEC, you're going to have 3 essays, of which 2 are graded, worth 15%. For fair, audit, and reg, for fair and audit, you have 7 task-based simulations. 1 of them is not graded, it's pre-tested, but you don't know which one. 1 of them is on research, the other 5 are on actual problems. So that's kind of a breakdown of how it is. Now, it used to be 70-30 back in 2010. When I took it years ago, back in it was 60-40. So they've kind of gone back to how it used to be, which is 60-40. As far as when can I take the exam, if you take the year and break it up into 4 quarters, in each quarter, there's 3 months. The first 2 months you can take the exam. The 3rd month is a blackout month. So, for example, you'll see there January, February, you can take the exam. March is a blackout month. So months 3, 6, 9, and 12 are blackout months. There's no exam. The other 8 months, you can take 1 or 2 or 3 or all 4 parts. So for example, January, February, you can take 1, 2, 3, or 4 parts. I have students, for example, that do my online course. They spend 6 weeks straight studying all 4 parts. They passed all 4. Right? They have no work, no friends, no life, but hey, they got through it. Other people will stretch it out because once you pass a part, you keep that part for 18 months, a year and a half. So if I pass a part, pass a part, pass a part, I have 18 months to pass the rest. Otherwise, I don't lose everything. I just lose the first part. So realize that as far as the testing windows, you can adjust it accordingly. Now, some of the firms will give you a huge bonus if you pass within 6 months or a year. So that would motivate me as well. If I know I can get $5,000 by passing in a year, then I'm going to make sure my priority is to get through this thing within the next year. As far as the educational requirements, you can see these on my website, rogercpareview.com. Every state is a little bit different, but basically in almost every state, you need to have at least a bachelor's degree to sit. In about half of the states, you need 150 semester units in order to sit, which is 225 quarter units just to sit. In a very few states, you need an actual master's degree to sit. Now, there's 2 different things. What does it take to sit? What does it take to get certified? So to sit for the exam, some states you just need a degree with a certain number of semester units in accounting and in business. Then basically what happens is you qualify to sit for the exam, which means you can now actually sit. That's not the same as getting certified. How do you apply? A lot of the states you'll apply with the state board. You go online, you fill out the application. Then you have to have your transcripts sent in from all of your schools. Now, what does that mean? I have schools that, let's say I went to more than one school. You may have to send those transcripts in from more than one school. The other thing is your transcripts have to be complete. This is tricky for some schools because you finish school, it may take them 2-3 months to get it complete. So you want to kind of push them. They know that as an accounting student, you need this thing done as soon as possible. So you want to make sure you talk to the registrar's office as far as getting it done. So you apply online. There's usually a $100 to $200 fee to apply. Then you fill out the application. You have your transcript sent in. I always have a copy sent to myself too, because that way when I get it, I know that the state board got it as well. They'll check them out. They'll say, yes, they qualify. Now you get this thing called an ATT, an authorization to test. That means you've got about 90 days in order to tell the AICPA which parts you want to sit for during your period called the notice to schedule. Now, notice to schedule, that means whatever part you've paid for, you can sit for during that period. Generally, most states are about 6 months. California, for example, is 9 months. There's a few states that are even 12 months. But what it means is you have a notice to schedule. That means whatever part you paid for, you have to sit for within that 6 to 9 month window. Now, here's a mistake a lot of people make. They go, oh, I guess I'll sign up for all 4. Only sign up for all 4 if you plan to sit for all 4 within that 6 to 9 months. Because if you don't sit within 6 to 9 months, you will forfeit that money. And it's about $800 to $900. It goes up a little bit each year, but figure about $200 a part. So what I suggest is this. When I first sign up, I'll sign up for maybe 2 parts. So I pay $100 or $200 to apply, and I'll pay about $400 for 2 parts. Then, if I want to add another part, basically a reapplication costs about $50, plus you pay for those parts. So the first time you apply could take anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks. From when you start to when you get your notice to schedule, probably closer to 6 to 8. Then you get your notice to schedule, sign up for 2. If you decide, I'm going to add another one, it only takes about a week because they already have your transcripts. Again, if you have any questions about this, feel free to contact my office. I have very friendly and knowledgeable staff. I also have all these requirements on my website, rogercpareview.com. Once you get your notice to schedule, then you contact the testing center called Prometrics. And Prometrics is a testing center located all over the country, all over the world. That's one of the reasons why we're taking the exam and going global. So, because we want to make sure, too, that people want to be a CPA throughout the world. Because then being a CPA becomes more valuable than, for example, in other countries they have a CA, Chartered Accountant. We want the US CPA to dominate. So, that's why they're taking the exam and going worldwide. So I contact Prometrics, and I can book my exam. Now remember, you've got 4 quarters in the year. Generally, the end of each quarter, the end of each window, is when it's the busiest. So January, February, then March. March is a blackout, so the very end of February gets busy. and so on. The busiest month of the year, take a guess? November, exactly, because everyone January says, I'm going to be a CPA this year. They get busy, they have busy season, la, 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 la. All of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, it's almost November. I better study. I better take the exam. So November gets busy. So you get your notice to schedule, you contact Prometrics, you go ahead and you can book it. Generally they're open 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday. They are open all day, all evening, so you can book, I'll take financial and downtown at 3 o'clock. So you show up there, you walk in, they go, oh, I have the afternoon seating. Here's a table for one, financial accounting. Have a lovely day. And then you take the exam. Generally, you'll receive the scores towards the end of each window. Sometimes they'll release it more than once, but that's when the scores are released as far as when you can see how you did. Now, as far as the requirements to get your license, you pass the exam, then you work. In some states it's 1 year, some states it's 2 year. Also in some states you need 150 hours in order to get certified, not to sit, but to get certified. You also have to work under the supervision of a licensed active CPA. Now, everyone asks me, the work experience you get before you pass, does it count? Yes, it does. All that happens is when you apply, then they sign off saying that they were a licensed active CPA, and now you're qualified to be a CPA. Now, as far as study strategies, and I feel everybody's excitement, they're like, Raj, I'm excited, I'm motivated, how do I get through the exam? Basically, my course is about 120 hours. You figure there's about 3 hours of study time for every 1 hour of class time. So what does that mean? Lectures are about 100 hours. You need about 300 hours of study time. That means you need about 400 hours of time. So what I tell students is they come in, and for example, I'll give them one of the books that I wrote. Here's an exciting financial book, leases, bonds, pensions, deferred taxes, governmental accounting, nonprofit consolidations, advanced accounting, partnerships, and so on. Then I'll say, here's the book. We're going to walk through it. What I do is I summarize, I simplify, I cut out the fat. I go, this is what you need to know in order to get through leases. What are they? TET, BPO, 75%. Then in class, we'll go through multiple choice and task-based simulation problems together. Then I send you home and say, read the notes. Then I want you to go through the homework books that I give you and the software. And this is homework and software that has all the released AICPA questions from the last several years. It's got thousands and thousands of multiple choice and hundreds of simulations as well. So what that means is I'm going to explain this difficult concept, but I'm going to make it high energy, exciting, motivating. You go, wow, bonds finally make sense. Now let me go home and practice it. And one of the cool things with the software is, and all the review courses, we all have the same released questions. The difference is how the material is being taught to you. So my software, what's cool about it is it has a study mode and an exam mode. With the study mode, it'll say, hey, do you know it? No. Do you want a hint? Yes. Do you want to see the material? And you can pop up the section that teaches it to you. The exam mode, you can say, give me 30 questions on deferred taxes, or give me a sample 90-question exam, and it'll give it to you. And it'll score you and tell you where you're strong, where you're weak, and so forth. So those are some of the cool things as far as what you need in order to study. But again, if you do what I tell you to do, you will get through the exam. How do I know? Because the national average pass rate is about 49%. Wow. Of all the courses, I get the highest documented pass rate of about 86%. How come my students do so well? Because first of all, it's the way that I teach. The way that I teach, also, I'm the only review course where one instructor teaches everything. Everyone goes, how can you do it? You're expected to know it. I should know it as well. I've been doing this for 20 plus years. Basically, what's nice about that, the benefit to you, is I don't just have you memorize, but I explain how all four parts are interrelated, how things in financial, for example, overlap into regulation. In financial, we talk about deferred taxes, temporary differences, permanent differences. Then we go to the M1 reconciliation for regulation, which is similar, talking about the differences between book and tax. Then we talk about auditing and financial statements. So there's a lot of overlap. That's where I'm going to walk you through it. The other thing I like people to realize, if you're bored in class, you're not going to go home and study. You're not going to be motivated. If I can motivate you in class, then you're going to go home, then you're going to study. With my course, I have an online location, I have live locations, I have USB. What is the USB? The USB is a little hard drive that you can plug in. You can watch 24/7. It's filmed from my live class. My online course is also filmed from my live class. You can watch it as many times as you want. You can pause me, bloop, rewind me, bloop, fast forward me. But they all come with live online USB. They come with the same materials, which is what? One book for each part and another homework book and software for each part. So you get 8 books. and 4 pieces of software, that's what you need to get you through the exam. The other thing that's unique is my course is a full-service course. It's not a self-study course. What does that mean? If you have homework questions, I have a message board that you can go to. You can ask your homework questions. They'll get answered within a day by other CPAs who have already taken my course, passed the exam, and want to still work with me. So it's important to realize that it's a full service, that if you have homework questions, we don't just leave you out there in the lurch. We help you walk through and understand all of these questions and all the solutions. That's how you get through the exam. The retail price for live online USB, you'll see it listed there. I also have a student special price, which is listed as well. Basically what it says is that with that student price, that includes all the material. It also includes an unconditional repeat. Also, it says that you have up to 18 months of access, which means that once you sign up, when you pass a part of the exam, you keep it for 18 months. What's a passing score, by the way? 75. 75 and above, woohoo, CPA. 74 and below, fail. What is 75? If you got a 75 in your last college midterm, what does that feel like? Like you're not doing well. You're a C. You're average. Guess what? That's what C in CPA stands for. Average. So what does that mean? It's not an IQ test. It's a test of discipline. If you study, you will pass. My job is to motivate you to put in the hours in order to get through the exam. So that's why my course comes with an unconditional repeat, which means that there's no requirements to qualify. You automatically get 18 months to take the course. Also, my software never expires. So I don't try to milk you out of more money. You got to pay more to extend it. Software never expires. So those are all things that are really important to understand as far as the way the course is set up. If you're going to work for one of the big firms, a national firm, public, private, governmental, I have contracts with 100+ different firms, as you'll see listed there. So again, go to your HR person and see if we have a contract with them. If we don't already, definitely contact me, my office, and we'll set something up so that way you can get some kind of special pricing. But realize we do have student special prices that if you're currently a college student, you make a $100 deposit, it locks that price in for eternity, which means you decide to stay and get a master's and a PhD and then 20 years later come back, that's the price you get, even if the price has increased since then. All right. Again, check us out on Twitter. Check us out on YouTube. I have some YouTube on Facebook as well. But again, I also suggest on my website you can watch a demo of any of my lectures. That way you get a feel for exactly what it is you're buying as far as how the material is going to be presented to you. Also, take a look at my books. I have thousands of testimonials on my website of students who have taken the course, and I'm the instructor you'll see for all 4 parts. So I guarantee that I will motivate you and help you accomplish your goal, which is A, interviewing properly, B, getting an internship and a job, and C, passing the CPA exam. If you study, you will pass. Study hard. I'll see you soon.